Abandoned, on a dark road on a seashore lived a mighty king called Poseidon. He ruled a dark street by himself and no one else there. He ruled with all his power. He ruled the street and enforced his dominance. He enforced his dominance everywhere, but no one was there. That was the problem. So he enforced his dominance on himself and began to kneel to himself and cry for help to himself, though no one would hear him, comfort him, soothe him, or notice him. So he began to feel his power was too harsh on him and regarded his lower self-harming side as patrocious. He began hollering and screaming in the dark, and trying to run into the sea for someone to hear him or save him from himself, but no one was there. So one day as he was sitting as Poseidon ruling his road, a flying object came from the sky and looked at him sitting at night in total silence. A lever came down and out came two tall beings with fiery eyes and yellow sharp claws and greenish skin, like a fish. And they began communicating in their language, and went back into their ship and flew away. Poseidon got scared and went inside the ocean, by the seaside, and drowned himself. And that's what happened to Poseidon, king of a dark street. And no one ever noticed him, or found his body, or knew him. And one heard of the travelers that went there. Murky Spring. In the 5th of July a Jubilee Day was held, the freedom of a small town from soldiers that rivaled their city, which was under siege in 1752, 200 years prior to their freedom. One day a spacecraft landed at their location in their town, and a visitor came. A young woman with a windy background and a small dog followed her. A child saw her and was interested in taking with her. And she invited the child to come with her into the ship and see the dog, and they did. And the boy was never seen again. Halloween. On the 31st of October a holiday was celebrated for children across the country. Halloween. A day when people were allowed to go outside and look for their true lovers and invite them in their houses and have sex with them. But on this day one old man was convicted of the girls' arrogance to the country's laws and holidays and voted for a stay for the girls going abroad. And he pulled out his shotgun and killed himself on his porch because no one would listen to him. And no one knew who he was and he was forgotten. The next year a girl celebrated the holiday where the man committed suicide, and she was caught in the moment and took her shirt off and was about 7 and the man 30. And he imploded in her, and she felt a shotgun shell in her head and fell on the floor and died, and authorities went to go check on what had happened, but no one was there. And they buried her without her family's notice and no one heard of her since. The end. Christmas. On Christmas one day a baby was born and gave the whole room a screech of madness. And they all began singing crazily and worshipping the child. And the child was killed by the energy released, and the room that was there and all of its guests killed themselves with knives they had at hand and slit their throats. The end. Thanksgivings. On Thanksgiving, a holiday where people would come together to eat with their loved ones, lived a dragon that wanted to mate with the local women. He saw one woman walk in one day in the street away from the populace, and he flew to her and took her by his mouth and took her to his cave, and she was raped in every way by the dragon and eaten, and he said Happy Thanksgiving and ate her. The end. Easter. On Easter, when children go find eggs filled with chocolate in their backyards hidden by a giant cat with a hat with red and white stripes, a black and white cat, with a knife, lived two children green. They were celebrating Easter one day, and saw the giant cat that's black and white staring at them, and laughing, and they went to see why and ran. And he disappeared. And so did everyone else. And they discovered they three were the only ones to ever had existed, and they killed themselves by drowning in a pond near their house. The end. The mechanic. On a busy street lived a mechanic that was old and frail. A traveler entered his shop and asked for some soda, and he gave it to him. And in entered a young girl with a spacecraft behind her with her dog and the wind behind her. And she was abducting people, like the child previously, and she had a friend, a girl that looked like her. And they both grabbed the man and young boy, and they were very strong, and abducted them, and took them in their ship and crashed it into a dark harbor, and no one heard of the two again, though rumors transpired that they were still around.